There are certain documents you will need in an emergency, and it's important to know where they are. If you are prepared before disaster strikes, you will have a head start on rebuilding your life. It is critically important to keep track of these critical documents. I'll admit, I'm not the best at this. I have 5 children, and there were years that I didn't know where everyone's paperwork was. I was a disorganized mess. Fortunately, we did not experience a disaster during that time, and I have since become much more careful with our files. I'm Nicole from Low Income Relief, an information that helps millions of people save money and get free stuff every year. If a disaster strikes, you may be surprised by how much documentation you will need. In these videos, we're going to address 12 documents you will need in an emergency. Vital records are the most important. When you try to get a driver's license, you usually need to show a social security card, photo ID, and proof of residency. But when you try to get a social security card, you usually need to show original documents proving your citizenship and identity. Can you imagine trying to replace these things without a single identifying document? It would be a nightmare. Vital records help you prove your identity, which is why they are the most important documents you need to store. Your driver's license or photo ID is most likely in your wallet. However, you can and should make a copy to keep in your important documents folder. Make sure you have identification for every member of the family if possible. You also need to store personally identifying information. The Federal Emergency Management Agency suggests including a recent photograph, fingerprints, and dental records for each member of your household. Fingerprinting can be done for free at many police stations or nonprofits. You can also take a simple fingerprint record for yourself using an ink pad and a piece of paper. You will also need birth certificates or adoption papers for each member of your family. If you cannot find the original birth certificates, you may need to order a replacement. Replacements can be ordered online and typically cost around $20 to $30 each. Social Security cards are also important documents that need to be protected. However, the Social Security Administration has repeatedly warned people that they should not laminate their cards because it can damage important security features. Instead, you are advised to cover the card with plastic or other removable material that does not damage the card itself. In the event of an emergency, you may also need to be able to prove your marriage, divorce, or custody over your children. Maintaining this paperwork will ensure the safety of your family in an emergency. If you are active military or a veteran, you will need to store your vital military records. These can include a copy of your military ID, a copy of your discharge paperwork, or DD-214 paperwork and other related documentation. If you have pets, you will also need to include identifying information for them. This can include a recent photo and description, as well as information about any microchips. Vaccination records for your pets may also be helpful. You should also store some of your medical information. If you are currently being treated by a physician or are taking prescription medications, you will need paperwork that proves this. A list of known allergies can also be helpful. Keep your doctor's contact information and a current prescription list with your important documents. You may also want to include your immunization history, powers of attorney for healthcare, important medical records, and any living wills or advance directives you may have. Property records are also important. If you are renting, then you should keep a copy of your current rental agreement or lease. Add your renter's policy information if applicable. If you own your own home, then it's a bit more complicated. You may need to store a copy of your deeds and mortgage documents. Mortgage paperwork can be ridiculously complex, so just store the 2-page settlement statement that shows the actual cost of the house and purchase expenses. Don't forget your homeowner's insurance information also. Whether you rent or own, you should also have photos or a list of household inventory in your personal records. Home inventory records are critical for successful insurance claims. We'll show you how to make a household inventory list on our website at lowincomerelief.com. You will also want to keep records about your automobiles and other vehicles if applicable. A copy of the title and registration should be stored in your records. Of course, you will also want some of your financial records. Financial records can be complicated, but it's much easier to gather this information before disaster strikes. You will need a list of account numbers and contact information for your banks, credit unions, and credit card companies. If you file taxes, it's also wise to store the first 2 pages of your prior year's tax returns. You can also include a list of account numbers and contact information for utilities and other services. If you own any stocks, bonds, investments, real estate, or retirement accounts, you'll want to keep that information stored there also. You should also store some online records, because let's be honest, a lot of our modern living is managed online. It's important to save and store records related to your online accounts also. The Federal Emergency Management Agency recommends storing a list of usernames and passwords for all of your online accounts. Finally, you should also include your estate planning records. Do you have a will? You should. We can show you how to make a will for free, and it's not as scary as you might think. Obviously, you should store a copy of your wills, trusts, funeral instructions, powers of attorney, attorney names, and phone numbers. If you don't have all of this information yet, don't worry. But if you have it, it's important to store a copy of it with your important documents. Now that we've covered what you need to store, we need to talk about how you should store it. It is important to store these documents securely. Many emergency preparedness sites will advise you to invest in a fireproof lockbox or safe. However, these can cost $30 to $50 and are often too expensive for families to purchase. You can use something as simple as a 3-ring binder to organize your files, but I prefer expanding file folders, which cost less than $10 but are very easy to use. If you go this route, I also recommend grabbing some sheet protectors. Of course, traditional binders and file folders will not protect your important documents from water or fire. However, Amazon has some awesome fireproof and waterproof file folders that are reasonably priced at $20 or less. You can find an affiliate link in the description below. I genuinely hope that you never need to use this information. Hopefully, you'll never be subject to a disaster or an emergency of this scale. However, it is always better to be prepared before the event. So I hope that you'll take some time and gather these documents. I hope that this video has been helpful to you, and we'll catch you in the next one.